Hello, and welcome back to Lots More from the Heart and to podcast number 4, a continuation of Gracefully Broken, Faithfully Rebuilt. Welcome to the beginning of a fresh new year. As we step into January, a little bit well into January now by your hearing of this, my prayer is that this year would be a year of blessing, a year of peace, a year marked more by Romans 12 kind of love. But most importantly, my hope is that this year we will share our stories, your story, my story, others' stories, inspiring stories of what God has done in your life, in our lives, and how He's still working. This podcast is dedicated to that very thing, the telling of our stories, the ways God uses our every situation for His sovereign will, the breakthroughs and the breakdowns, the moments that make sense and the moments that never will. As we begin this new year, I'm continuing this, as I said, my part 2 that I started last month. How God brought me into His work, how He gracefully broke me to rebuild me, to prepare me, to purpose me, in order to use me according to His will. A lot has happened since our last podcast. From the logistics, from the record, I find that there's been a lot of new listeners who have joined. Thank you for being here. And God has continued to give me insights into His calling. He's given me more insight into this ministry, into this work. So, wherever you are, as you listen, maybe with a cup of coffee. I won't name brands here, but Starbucks and Dutch Bros. Maybe you're getting ready for your day. Maybe you're driving to work, driving home. Wherever you are, settle in. This podcast is entitled Forgiveness, the Choice That Frees Us. As I was preparing to record this episode, I was reminded again of the importance of forgiveness. Not just being forgiven, but forgiving, and the harm that comes when we choose not to. As I shared at the end of last month's episode, I was faced with choices, real choices. I joked about forgiving Tom Brady for beating my beloved Browns more times than I want to even remember to count. But beneath that humor was something much deeper. I'll take you there where I was now, where I was then at that time in my story. I was in what seemed like a real place. It's still, even to this moment, somewhat blurry, but as I remember best, I was on a shore. There were tents, dwellings, stands even, like bleachers stands, and the ocean was stretched out before me. I remember being faced with a question. What are you going to do? Before my surgery, I was involved in a very intense fitness program, Warrior Fitness Club. Before that surgery, before the sepsis, I loved it. I was strong. Strangely, at this particular time, I looked around and I have a strong remembrance of people from that class, even the instructor. They were present in the stands. Now, their faces weren't clear, but I had a knowing, an understanding that that's who they were. It felt as though I was wrapped in something, like saran wrap, truthfully. And I was trying to push through to make my decision. And this is where I left off on our last episode. What I remember distinctly from that time in that was I saw 3 window panes. One was white, one was yellow, and one very clearly was brown. And it was the brown window where the decision had to be made, the decision to forgive, the decision to love, even to love those I didn't love at the time. When I later became fully conscious, when my husband came to visit, or when he was there after well, I guess it wasn't surgery. I guess I woke up, or I was one of the days he did come to visit, was well after surgery. But anyway, I talked about that window to him. I tried to explain it. I mean, as soon as I was able to verbalize, I tried to get that out. And as I shared with him, I remember the overwhelming sense of relief, the burden lifting, and having come to grips with the fact that I needed to forgive so many things, that I had to put aside things that I held. And I'm ashamed to say it, but I held things like envy, the inability to rejoice with those who rejoice. I was great at weeping with those who wept, but to rejoice with those who rejoiced, that had something that I felt like, well, gee, why didn't I get that? It was those things that were seen and revealed through that brown window. Well, there were more dreams, there were more memories, and then it was the calling. The other dream that I experienced that it's important to mention here in this telling of the story was was more cultural, ancestral. I remember preparing food, celebration food. There was a strong sense of history and of heritage. I mean, I literally looked around and there were places, not really familiar places, but there were places and there were people. In particular, there was an older woman who spoke to me and said, "You must remember the struggles of the past. You must tell them. Do not forget. Do not forget to pass it down to your children so they can pass it to their children and keep those memories." Now, it wasn't just cultural history or slavery, but it was also biblical history. It was also spiritual roots that I needed to remember. Needing to remember the stories of David, who was not perfect. He did a lot of things wrong, but yet he was a man after God's own heart. Stories about Abraham, who, for faith, the faith he exhibited, um, believing God's promise to him. Stories like the story of Jonah, who really didn't care for people of Nineveh and didn't want to see them get saved. And he ran from that, didn't want to do it, but God brought him back. And God put him in a place where he had to agree to help people that he did not want to help. People who failed, all of these people, they're people who failed, they struggled with forgiveness. Some of these people ran, but all of these people, both the biblical characters and those in my life, were people who were used by God. Even as I now speak, the picture is clearing for me. I would say that I've rehearsed this, but I really haven't, because I want this to be from my heart. As I speak to you right now, I am really seeing a clearer picture. Next was the call. There was a call I needed to make. During that time, before the rehab, while I was still in the hospital, I reached a point where I needed trusted, strong, and knowledgeable encouragement. I guess I was getting a little depressed, a little down. And what I was directed to was a familiar voice, a voice of authority. I needed to hear the voice of someone God had placed in my life, someone who also happened to be my hospice director and a highly skilled nurse. Thinking back, I can't believe I called Laura, but I did. And I'm forever thankful that I did. What she gave me, what God gave me through her, was exactly what I needed. Her exact words, I don't remember, but her words spoke to my heart. And this is the essence of what I remember from those words. Basically, it was this: you have work to do. God has something for you to do. You're going to get through this and you're going to come back and you're going to do that work. You're going to get back to work. Now, Laura is a realist, and I love that about her. She understands the valley of the shadow, and God used her words to anchor me, to keep me going. I am so grateful for that moment. I went through recovery, weakness, and grace. Now, I didn't yet understand the enormity of what God was doing. I mean, after those dreams, I began to recover, but oh, I had lost so much. I lost strength, I lost mobility, I gained massive fluid weight. I couldn't even walk. I could barely eat. Now, not that that should have really been that big a problem, but it was different than never being able to eat before. I mean, nothing tasted good. It was just not good. Before I could be um, released, I had to have fluid drained from my lungs. Thanks to another good friend, um, she kind of pointed out how, hey, she's having trouble taking a deep breath, and my husband was definitely, yeah, she's having problems with that. So I did have fluid drain from my lungs, and that was a little scary. But what I thought would never, something I thought I'd never celebrate, um, I had to celebrate. And it was like, finally, I'm being able to poop. That's one of the prerequisites before they let you out of the hospital. You've got to kind of be able to do that. So in order for me to be discharged, that was an obstacle that I had to overcome. And yes, I actually contacted praying friends to tell them the good news, and we rejoiced the discharge poo. After that, I was transferred to this, what I call it, the step down, but I was transferred to the best rehab hospital in the area. I was at first discouraged when I got there because I had gone from previously curling a 25-pound dumbbell weight to barely being able to lift a 1 pound weight. But God met me there too. I regained strength slowly and I went home. Albeit, I went home with a wheelchair, a walker, raised commode seat, and adult diapers. Then on July 21st, when I was finally going home, when I got home, I was so happy to see my doggy Louie. I had dreamt of him too, and I just knew he missed me, and I missed him too. But once I was home, that's where I got the help of an amazing home health team. I began to learn how to live again. I was so thankful for my physical therapist who helped me to one of my greatest milestones. And that was to get outside in my yard and to sit on my deck again. I had dreamt of being on my deck and having my usual quiet time with God. After home health came back to work and the unexpected discovery. Unexpected totally. Time going forward, in a 1 year follow up exam with my PC, he discussed some x ray findings, and they revealed I had something showing on my kidney, a growth, later to be classified as a mass. The word tumor was used, and suddenly here we are again, facing a surgery. After much prayer and discernment, my husband and I decided to seek care at Stanford Hospital. God guided every step, even down to choosing a doctor who was solely chosen on the fact that he had the same name as my brother. When I made the call, they asked me if, well, do you want, who do you want? Who do you want for a doctor? And I said, well, I don't know anybody. Can you name the doctors for me? And as he was naming them, one of them, his name was Alan. And well, my brother's name was Alan. So there, scientific, worked out. That's how we chose. So my doctor was just awesome. On July 15th, during my first consult, the surgeon was clear. Dr. Allen was clear. No biopsy. The location was way too dangerous and surgery was going to be necessary. And once again, despite everything I'd already been through, I had a strange peace and all I could do was trust God. Perhaps the most I should do and did do was trust God. The surgery was scheduled for September 11th and was fast approaching. That date didn't fully register at the time we scheduled. It was when I was in pre-op that they had a TV going and it was very nice. But there was something a ceremony that was on and it dawned on me, 9/11. We were doing 9/11 and it was, wow, a somber thing. But I still had peace and on we went into surgery. Well, the surgery went well. The mass was removed. All my margins were clean. They were clear. The margins were clear. But the story didn't end there, as the day after surgery, while leaving the hospital, I was in a car accident. The irony was overwhelming and the timing almost unbelievable. I once again found myself in God's hands in a way that I had never experienced before. I won't go into details about the accident and all that surrounded it, although that would be a podcast for another day. But I will say recovery followed, infection followed, more home health, more healing, and eventually clarity. Why I'm still here. Over and over, I asked the question, why am I still here? Why did I survive sepsis? Why was the cancer caught early? Why did I live? The answer kept coming back to the same conclusion, the same answer. God still has work for you to do. Had the kidney cancer not been discovered, I could have easily become one of the hospice patients I now serve. So had it not been for the sepsis, they would not have discovered the kidney cancer. Now, I'm a firm believer in, now I am anyway, I should say, in not wasting a pain. And God certainly didn't intend for that to be the case in this part of my story, in this part of my life. Instead, God redeemed the pain and he used it. So I will have to say the most important message of truth learned was forgiveness. And as I said earlier about the windows, it's all about forgiveness, not just receiving forgiveness, but forgiving. And I will tell you, I learned that no amount of money, no amount of what you could gain is comparable to having peace. And That is what I want. That is what is more valuable to me right now than any other thing in my life. So, this is the purpose found. The work God, has given me to do is this: walking with others through grief, healing, and life. So, yes, I do grief counseling, life coaching, living fully now, preaching that, living fully now, not later, because in living, we are loving, or we should be, and we should share the love God has given us and that love for those He loves. So, I am about encouraging others to live the life God has given them and to love others fully. And in order to love others, you have to love yourself, right? So, this podcast is for you because your story matters, your pain matters, and your healing matters. And when you tell your story, it gives someone else permission to tell theirs. I'm really going to push now for those of you who are hearing this. If you feel like you've got a story that needs to be told, and like I said, every story needs to be told, because you never know who it might be that hears it, that receives the encouragement and the uplift and the ability to face the next day. How can God use you in telling your story? So I encourage you, please keep following this podcast. Look for the next offering and first interviews with others who need to tell their stories. Perhaps you. Go ahead, please, and check out the blog and the website. The website is www.lotsmorefromtheheart.com. Tell a friend. And until the next time, may God richly, richly bless you.